Mr. Mark Champ, a very warm welcome to this special holiday program. Please let me have a little bit of background about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Mark Chapman. I've lived in Ethiopia for 26 years now, and the focus of my time has been on developing community-based tourism, helping local farmers build guest houses and host tourists. In 2010 I set up Test for Tours. I've been running this company which has the main focus again on this community tourism, but we take people all over the country. And then very recently with COVID, I set up Ride the Rift with a group of other tour operators, and we run mountain biking tours and hiking in beautiful remote parts of the country. So that's my life here.
Fascinating. So obviously there are a lot of things that attracts you to come to Ethiopia and engage in the tourism business. And we also know that Ethiopia has a diverse heritage and cultural landscapes. So how would you describe Ethiopia as a unique identity and its significance, especially on the global stage?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Of course, everybody's got their own perspective on what Ethiopia means. You know, coming from the West, you have a different view from that of Ethiopians. And there are some sort of ideas in the background that sort of floating around. Priest kings and this ancient view of Ethiopia is one sort of concept that's out there. Of course, sadly, in the 80s there was the famine and Live Aid, and this is another image especially for people of my generation, because I was a student at that time. And then other people also know about the ancient religion. And then as people get more into Ethiopia, they'll learn about Lalibela and the castles in Gondar, the Simien Mountains, Gelada baboons, and these kind of things. And as a tour operator, we're trying to inject into that a bit of knowledge of like the Danakil, the Omo Valley, the Bali Mountains, the rivers, the waterfalls, and these other things to sort of blend in with those ideas that people have about Ethiopia.
Great. So Ethiopians similarly are, the people are often known as, resilient and warm. And in your view, which qualities or cultural aspects really fascinates you more?
Well, I love the depth to Ethiopia and the diversity, as you've said. But one of the cultural things that really makes Ethiopia a great fit for tourism is there's a wonderful hospitality in the people, a natural hospitality and interest to engage with foreigners that come to visit. The coffee ceremonies that you get invited to and the big smiles. And also I think because Ethiopia was never colonized, because of the history of Ethiopia, your writing, your religion, everything goes back, thousands of years, to the time of the pharaoh, older than Europe. So when Ethiopians meet foreigners, they feel at least equal, whereas in other parts of Africa where they don't have that heritage, you don't get that same connection. So when you connect with people here, it's as equals, which is wonderful, and it makes you feel much better. And there's so much for Ethiopians to tell about their country, their history, and their culture. Ethiopians have a passion for Ethiopia, which is also something that I think when we provide guides to our clients, we tend to provide different guides in different places with local knowledge. And the passion that these guides hold is one of the key things that transmits across.
Awesome. So are these the only characteristics that inspired you during your stay here?
They were key ones. I traveled in Ethiopia first in the 1990s and fell in love with the country and just found the people so engaging, so warm, and it really was, although the landscape is fascinating, the history is fascinating, it was the people that were the number one reason I wanted to come and live in Ethiopia.
Great. Ethiopia obviously has various culture that is boasting for having, and one of the very unique characteristics is the country has its own calendar, which is described as the 13 months of sunshine. So as you are a man who have explored Ethiopian tourism and as a foreigner, How do you see that? And does that really appeal to you? And to what extent that has been a challenge for Ethiopia or opportunities when we compare it at the global stage? Has there any challenge?
Well, yeah, there's a lot to say on that. I mean, the 13 months of sunshine, we'll deal with that first, was a great slogan back in the 60s or 70s when this slogan was first used. But now we don't really want to associate Ethiopia with a dry, sun-baked landscape. We want to get the idea of it being green and fertile, and land of origins fits very well. But the 13 months concept was very clever and worked at its time. And of course, the unique calendar, which is a Julian calendar, approximately 7 years behind the Gregorian calendar, and gradually over time it slips further behind. Over the centuries it slips further behind, is fascinating. And at Test for Tours we've been developing a calendar for years that shows it starts in September, so you have the monthly grid, but it shows all the saints' days, fasting, Islamic holidays, cultural holidays, even people may not know, but on Maskrah Masr, it's the anniversary of the death of the Queen of Sheba.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's not just some random things like that, but you have Rufael on Pagomesost, which is a day when it rains. The rain is going to be a blessing, so you want to go out in the rain.
Yeah.
Rufael is a patron saint for pregnant women as well. So, I mean, there's so much fascinating things in the Ethiopian calendar. So we produced this calendar and a diary as well.
So where does
to
the
commemorate
motivation
the year
came from? How did this originate? Because you, an expert, a foreigner, you know, even though you stayed longer here, how did this develop to your mind?
Well, I mean, centuries ago, many countries still used the Julian calendar. And then, I mean, if you go back further, this calendar starting in September actually used to start in August, but as I said, it changes over the millennia a little bit. So it started in late August. This was the ancient Egyptian New Year, when the rain in Ethiopia flooded the Nile and caused the Nile to reach its high point towards the end of August. So that was a new year for the ancient Egyptians, and this calendar has come to Ethiopia with its 12 full months and then the Pagomenical month at the end that fills in the extra days. So I think it's a beautiful circle. It was the rain in Ethiopia that caused the new year in Egypt, and now this is the calendar in Ethiopia, which, by the way, isn't used by the Coptic Church in Egypt.
I see.
It's unique. I mean, the word unique is overplayed in the world, but Ethiopia really has so many unique features, and the calendar is one of those. And I think it's a wonderful way to demonstrate how Ethiopia is different. You've got the saints' days, as I say, all the different holidays in there, and it's the fasting periods, and it's part of Ethiopian culture that is great to be able to display to guests.
Great, nice. However, that is true, as you have described it in your own words. Most international organizations, they just follow the Gregorian calendar. However, Ethiopia, as we've said, it has its own calendar specific to the country, considering the culture, practices, and a lot more factors are going to be there. But to what extent that really limited or become a challenge for Ethiopia when various international events are following the Gregorian calendar? What are the opportunities, the fact that Ethiopia is having its own calendar?
Well, I think you run the two side by side. So any international, in fact, most organizations work on the Gregorian calendar, with the 12 months. But then culturally, everyone says, like today is the New Year. Everybody knows the Ethiopian New Year, September 11, Maskrah, and this is part of the culture of Ethiopia. So I think the two can go side by side. It sometimes causes a confusion, and one of the main reasons for that is people love to translate. So when they say Maskrah, they say September. And I'm like, Waini, don't say September. So call it Maskrah.
So can we consider that as a problem for the local people as well while doing the interpretation? And how would the international community also look at that one?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is when you say 1 September is our new year, and really you mean Maskrah. And so you need, you need to be able to say the Ethiopian calendar names, Maskrah, Tekemt, Hadar, and so on, as you say the month in you know, as it is in Ethiopia, rather than translating it when then you get an 11-day inaccuracy. So I think that's a challenging thing, and the slight stumbling point is the fact that people translate the months into the Western calendar months, and it's better just to keep it
as it is.
As it is. I get frustrated as well. People, instead of saying Timkat, they say Epiphany. It's like Timkat tells you it's a baptism. That's what it means. So the baptism's commemoration ceremony, that's what you should be saying. Instead of calling it Epiphany, then people in the West, they think of the wise men, the visit of the wise men, these other holidays, and it you know, it confuses. So I think use Ethiopian terminology for things like this is much better and much less confusing. And then people are going to say, what is Muskram? And you can tell them, Muskram is the first month of the Ethiopian year. It starts on the 11th of September, 3 years. Fourth year, it starts on the 12th of September. But you can tell them these things, and then they're interested to learn more. So that's the only thing I urge people, is use your Ethiopian words. Kremt, we've just been going through the Kremt. Don't say winter or summer, because it isn't. It's the Kremt, or the rainy season. But use the Ethiopian language, use the Ethiopian words to describe things. That's
so you think that is one way to promote the culture, to promote its genuine nature of the country.
And the fact that Ethiopia is unique, use these terms, and then people will understand that this is something special. I mean, the Kremt is neither the winter nor the summer. Depends on neither term works. So just Kremt.
So is there anything that is expected from people who are actually working in the tourism sector, or anyone who's concerned in promoting this unique feature, so that the global world is going to realize how unique and beautiful, and we preserve it to the next generation?
I would encourage everyone involved in tourism, whether it's guides or tour operators or government officials, to go back to the origins, land of origin, use the original word in that Ethiopia has developed to describe these phenomena, these things, these cultural points. And when you use that, then there's actually some meaning behind it, and you can take out the meaning sometimes from behind it. That can be quite interesting too. So always use the indigenous word for the you know, the calendar event or whatever it is.
Very splendid, very splendid. Now we are going to approach the New Year, and as everyone is eagerly waiting for that. So as you are, you know, familiar with Ethiopians and exploring all cultures, what heartfelt messages or wishes do you have for people you want to convey?
Well, first of all, I'd say Nkwanda Durasachu for everybody, Melkom Addis Ahmed. And my wish for this country is peace. Any country in the world needs peace. Tourism needs peace, and for people to get on with their lives, everybody needs peace. So my New Year message is salam. I would love to see peace in every corner of this country.
Mr. Mark Champ, I really appreciate for committed your time in being here in the discussion that we are setting. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, anytime.